camera just right here. One sec, my friends. Having a little bit of problems. I don't know why I can't go landscape now on my lives on YouTube. What is going on? But anyway, thanks for being here, everyone. Those of you that do decide to join, Jason. And of course, I go by ESTEY'S Crime Maze. Oop. Oh my goodness. Sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. I was just saying I was just about to go live and I was saying I got to adjust the camera. Anyway, and I was saying, of course, my name is Jason and I go by ESTEY'S Crime Maze. And I was thanking all of you for joining me today. Let's rock it out, shall we, my friends? You know what we're going to talk about, don't you? The Idaho 4 case. That's right. A case that is, as I've said in my videos before, we know it is absolutely wild and crazy, those of us that are familiar with the Idaho 4 case. But also what we've been fed by the FBI, from corporate media, from law enforcement right there in Moscow, Idaho. They keep telling us it's tragic. It's so tragic. And why do they say that? Well, they go on to say, right, on November 13th, 2022, they're trying to convince you that an atrocity took place, a quadruple unaliving. Think about this, my friends. They're actually trying, in their own stupid way, to convince you that 4 young, beautiful university students were stabbed in the most brutal way, stabbed to death, bloody crime scene. So much blood, we're supposed to believe, that it seeped from the foundation of the house. But my friends, it's all a psyop. In my opinion, as I've been saying in my videos over and over again, and it took me about a year and a half. You know, it wasn't like I just came up with this theory right away. No. But what I'm talking about is, my friends, is this was an extraction removal operation. Hello, the students are alive, everyone. Yes, I truly believe that. We know the FBI and law enforcement have lied about this case, right? In many, many ways. Most people realize that. But what most people still don't seem to understand, at least most people, is that the biggest lie is that there was even a homicide in the first place, a quadruple unaliving. It never happened, my friends. This is the good news, right? It never happened. I'm telling you, everyone. And we could just see it with our own eyes. The whole crime scene was staged. It really was, everyone. Even the red on the foundation of the house that I mentioned earlier, you know, that had me confused for a year and a half, like a lot of people. I thought, well, you know, the FBI, they're telling us this atrocity happened, even though we don't see the bodies. We haven't had any leaked crime scene photos, but, you know, the red on the foundation of the house, it sure as hell looks like it. I guess that's blood. We're supposed to assume that it took place, right, everyone? But wait a sec, everyone. I think that was just the FBI, the feds. It was all part of the staging, everyone. They had to put something in your face to make you think that it happened, because evidently the feds in this case, they don't want you to know the truth that the students are alive. They're protected under a WITSEC program. I've talked extensively about this. Birdie, who's on YouTube and TikTok, of course, he did a really good presentation on this, everyone. I highly recommend it. And yeah, they're protected under WITSEC, which is the Federal Witness Protection Security Program right in the United States, everyone, right? And by the way, when they extract people, maybe I should have waited 10 minutes to get the algorithms going before I get into all this, but anyway, it's too late now, everyone. We're going to rock and roll. As I was saying, everyone, they extract people and they will move them out of the country, especially like if confidential informant is compromised, etc. And they have infrastructure for WITSEC programs all across the United States, everyone, right? To protect largely confidential informants, federal government witnesses, people, protecting witnesses for upcoming trials, or confidential informants that are helping the feds, for example, in a criminal investigation. These federal programs, my friends, they exist. Most people don't talk about it. You know? Hi, Ron. Or sorry, hi, Ren. Hello, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Keep it coming, everyone. I love the live chat when we go live. Hopefully today, I'm going to have my sister fix something of the internet when the live is done. So hopefully this time when it uploads, this time my face won't be all blurry. You won't have a blurry screen, in other words, everyone. We'll see if it's successful, okay? But today, everyone, once again on this live, I want to talk a bit about the ESTEY'S crime scene. And I also want to mention Jay Embry again. I've been exposing this YouTube creator in my own way. I'm trying to do it respectful but firm. You know, I've questioned some of these YouTube creators, everyone. I think if we want to get to the truth, I think it's okay to ask the hard questions. You know, is this guy, for example, is he a disinformation agent? Right? And I explained why I asked those questions, everyone, and why I personally don't trust him. You know, he puts out some good information, but again, if you're a disinformation agent, everyone, I would argue, let's just hypothetically, let's say, again, that the FBI are hiring the occasional disinformation creators out there, people with their own channels even, right? Well, naturally, some of them, they'll get them they'll get on the free Brian Kohlberger bandwagon, right? They'll try to convince you that they're authentic, that they want Brian Kohlberger free. So people stand behind them. They'll get a lot of viewers, they'll get support, but then they'll put out another narrative where they actually go along with the atrocity taking place, right? But with no evidence to support it, other than, you know, we know the public coroner made a statement. But again, my friends, you'll hear me say this several times in this live. There's been no verification of any of the bodies being removed, everyone, right? No pre-trial evidence talking of the bodies. Let me just review this again, everyone. And we're going to go over a whole list of, I believe, the evidence largely that supports this was an extraction removal operation, my friend. Circumstantially, when you connect the dots, right? And a lot of red flags. And by the way, my friends, again, Jay Embry, this YouTuber, why I have problems with him, and I don't know why more and more people don't have issues with this. This guy has done hundreds and hundreds of videos, right? And what's his, again, he's going along with I would argue, the FBI pre-planted narrative. And Steve G too, right? Oh, the atrocity happened. Oh, and Jay Embry thinks it's the Aryan family, the Aryan Knights, he's convinced that took out a hit successfully, apparently, got out clean, left two roommates alive, and they actually intimidated Dylan and Bethany Funk to delay the 911 call for 8 or 9 hours. Just use reason, logic, common sense, my friends, just for a moment, please. Does that really make sense? I think the answer, you have to, if you're being honest, is no. What makes a lot more sense is that, again, it was an extraction removal operation. When the feds went to extract the four beautiful students, that being Kaylee Gonzalez, Xander Canoodle, Ethan Chapman, right, and Madison Mogan, the feds would have absolutely debriefed Dylan Morrison and Bethany Funk, as I've said over and over again, right? They would have debriefed them that night or probably even prior. This extraction could have been done even probably the day before, for all we know. But either that night or before, and they would have told them in no uncertain terms to Bethany Funk and Dylan Morrison, don't call 911 for 8 or 9 hours. Doesn't that make sense, my friends? Reason, logic, common sense? And again, these federal programs, my friends, they exist. If you think that, we all know the students were targeted, so why wouldn't the feds try to rescue them? Why wouldn't they have gone in there in the cover of darkness? Right? Everyone, think about it. They knew, and again, Jay Embry could be right in the fact that some Aryan Knights, Aryan family members and or cartel members, but some gangbangers, let's say, they very well may have targeted these students. Or for all we know, it could be frats. These students were targeted. But it's a whole other speculation. And I think it's absolutely incorrect because you got no evidence to back it up when you say that the hit got carried out. This Jay Embry keeps trying to convince you, seemingly, keeps saying that the hit got carried out. Are you kidding me? See, this is where, my friends, we gotta push back on Jay Embry, I believe, and other YouTube creators that go along with this nonsense. It's mostly Jay Embry. How could an atrocity happen? How could a hit get carried out when, hello, the feds had surveillance on the house? We know this, everyone. We know they had patrol agents all over the place. We know there were undercover cops working that night and the previous nights and afterwards. They were all over the neighborhoods, my friends, and all kinds of criminal investigations going on. So if you think this atrocity took place on the feds' watch, you must think, Jay Embry must think the feds are the dumbest people on the planet and lazy as hell. I mean, it just couldn't happen, everyone. I would argue the feds did their job. This is what they're trained to do, everyone. They knew what was going on. They knew a lot more than we did. We would ever know, right? They knew that these students were, obviously their lives were in danger for whatever reason. And it probably stemmed at first with a confidential informant being compromised, whether it be Bethany Funk, maybe the other students found out she was a confidential informant. You know, we know Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogan, particularly Madison Mogan, we know she flapped her lips a lot, my friends. The night of, as many people have talked about, it's all on tape, right? Kaylee says to Madison, "What did you tell Adam?" And Madison replied, "I told Adam everything." And then what did you hear? Well, you heard Jack, who was protecting the girls. Obviously, somebody was after them. Somebody didn't like these girls. That Jack was there for sort of protection, right, as a bodyguard, apparently taking them to the grub truck and being around them. Jack says to Maddie, didn't he? He says, they're going to get you for that, Maddie. They're going to get you. So the feds would have been all aware of this, everyone. Mark my words. The feds would have known that Maddie told, Adam everything. And Adam's involvement, like what did Adam know and how is he involved in this case? I don't know, everyone. But what I do know, reason, logic, common sense, I think it's all likelihood the feds went in there that night. They extracted the students, and some of the students, maybe particularly like Ethan Cham and Xander Canuto, they may not even known they were going to be extracted. I think Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogan, they might have already known that this was going to happen. I say that because Kaylee's mother, remember everyone, she said in an interview, she admitted that Kaylee photobombed her the day before this happened. What daughters photobombs their moms? Give them all their photos, by the way. I had a mother say this on Facebook. She's got two daughters roughly the same age as Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez. She says, my daughters have never photobombed me, and she doesn't think it's a coincidence. So it could be shown that Kaylee Gonzalez, my friends, knew that something was going to go down where the feds, they were going to go into a WITSEC program, that their cover was blown or whatever. It's somewhat speculation, but those were my thoughts there. Grant says, what? Nadine says, hi. What are you asking, Grant? What do you mean, what? Young boy says, how are you, Danny Morrison? Who's Danny Morrison? I'm a little confused, man. I want to see more of you on the chat page. I want to see some brilliant questions and comments if you're up for it, everyone. And share this live maybe when it's done. Thank you for participating, everybody. I got to laugh. When I was exposing this Jay Embry and asking a lot of hard questions about this YouTube creator, he's got over 20,000 subs, by the way, right? But do you really believe this guy? Do you believe half the things he says? And then he brags, that he goes through all the court docs and he's all about facts. That's what he tells you. What a bunch of nonsense. Jay Embry can't prove to you that the atrocity happened. He can't prove to you that a quadruple unaliving happened, right? And the guy doesn't even go into the fact that, no, it was a staged crime scene. They didn't treat this like a biohazard. He refuses to tell you that truth, my friends, right? The only thing that he's come close to telling you in terms of a staged crime scene is that he goes on about the coerced 911 call. Well, no shit. But he doesn't tell you, everyone. Here's another thing that Jay Embry doesn't tell you as part of the staged crime scene. This guy Shame on him, in my opinion, everyone. He doesn't tell you what I've told you in numerous videos. And you don't have to take it from me, everyone. You can look this up yourselves after I tell you. The feds can legally stage a violent event if a confidential informant has been compromised. Did you hear what I said, everyone? Are your socks blown off yet in your hat? Or as I said in my videos, if Jay Embry listens, maybe his glasses will be blown off. This is, by the way, everyone, doesn't he look like a Fed to you, in my opinion? The guy wears glasses in all his videos, except one video he showed his eyes. You know, he's got all these total loyal supporters for some reason. I think they're just, in my opinion, they're just buying into his brainwashed mind control, perhaps. But anyway, but no, there's a woman, and she defended him, and she said, oh, I saw one video where he showed his eyes, and he has light blue eyes. And he doesn't want people to get intimidated by his beautiful light blue eyes. That was something about, that's basically almost how she said her comment. I couldn't believe it. Obviously, I was smiling, my friends, and I think laughing, right? It's ridiculous. But no, this Jay Embry, everyone, he wears shades. He won't even show you his eyes, man. That's a typical Fed move, isn't it, everyone? Or ex-FBI or somebody who's working for law enforcement, isn't it? Where you would wear shades all the time in every video. And yet people buy into this. They don't even ask any hard questions to Jay Embry, apparently, most people. But if we want to be honest, everyone, again, you can know, in my opinion, Jay Embry is totally, at the very least, he's totally incorrect. And I think he knows what he's doing, everyone. He knows, he has to know that no unalivings took place. That this, my sister was out there. This was a staged crime scene. He has to know that.
I have to interrupt.
Sure. Uh-oh.
Sorry. It's Jason's sister Kendra. I have to interrupt for a second. Here's my thing, is that no matter what anyone is saying, it has to come down to proof.
Yes.
Proof. So you have a theory, Jay. Everyone has all these theories, and everyone wants to claim that it's right.
And that's what I'm asking about Jay Embry.
But it's all speculation. Everything is just speculation.
No, I have my list here. Like, there's no verifiable evidence that the bodies were removed, and Jay Embry doesn't want to talk about that, right, everyone? He claims an atrocity took place by the Aryan family Aryan Knights, and I'm saying, as my sister said, where's the proof, Jay Embry and other YouTube creators on that? Thank you.
Still alive, Jason.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. Oh, my sister, she is one of a kind, folks, my beautiful sister, and she's right. You know, we can agree to disagree, but what I'm trying to get people to ask the hard questions of Jay Embry. I'm an open book at full disclosure, folks, okay? If you want to agree to disagree with me, fine, but my friends, as Tommy Jude said on Once Upon a Crime Time, there is no evidence that those students were unalived. There's absolutely nothing. And I'm going to prove it to you, everyone. But Jay Embry, why doesn't he go there, my friends? Why doesn't he admit this? Instead, he's just seemingly, to me, it's almost like a brainwashing. He just wants you to mindlessly believe that an atrocity took place, but with no evidence, right? And that the Aryan family and the Aryan Knights took it out successfully. It's horseshit, my friends. It's absolute nonsense. And the only thing, he did bring up the security, but you know what this guy said? I'll never forget it. He actually said, just nonchalantly, he said, well, basically said, the feds, I think they had security, but it was just enough to make the parents feel comfortable. It wasn't enough, I think he said, it wasn't enough for this high threat. You know, they didn't know the threat was so, are you kidding me? That's a disgraceful comment to every federal agent and law enforcement that we have, my friends, in my opinion, especially working on this case in Moscow, Idaho, and that were involved intimately in protecting those students in particular, my friends. That's what Jay Embry, though, puts out to you, everyone, that they just had enough security, the feds, to make the parents feel more comfortable. Is that what surveillance is, Jay Embry? I don't think so, dude. They had patrols all over the streets. There's even pictures of a guy removing cameras the day before on Reddit, which certainly a lot of people think is probably real. You know, again, my friends, Jay Embry does not tell you the truth of the circumstantial evidence that's overwhelming that this was a staged crime scene. And let me go over some of that, everyone, okay? And thank you again, everyone, for being here. I'm not seeing too many people on the live. I don't know what's going on, man. Getting a little bit worried. Hop on the lives, folks. By the way, you know, one of them, of course, we know the investigation. In the investigation, many people were cleared almost straight away. That never happens usually, okay? And now that isn't part directly of a staged crime scene, but these are just some of the red flags as well. You got strange discrepancies, asking for information, whereabouts for 4 hours. I think that was with Zen and Ethan. And yet when the PCA came out, Bethany Funk had made statements about seeing them for 4 hours. The timing at the crime scene changed around a few times. Let's see here. No, let me get to the nuts and bolts, my friends, what I was trying to say earlier. Remember, you got 2 survivors. You know, right there, everyone, by the way, just having 2 survivors, think about it. Again, going back to Jay Embry for a moment, everyone. This guy tells you that he thinks the assailants intimidated Bethany Funk and Dylan Morrison to not call 911 for 8 hours. Does that make sense? Do you really buy that? When has this been seen in the history of true crime, everyone? When you had 2 survivors in the same dwelling, whether it be a house or apartment, this being a house, right? You had 2 survivors, and yet perpetrators, 1 or more perps, are going to actually be able to intimidate the 2 witnesses to delay the 911 call for about 8 hours. Really was probably about 9 hours. Does that make sense? Does that happen? I don't think so, everyone. What again makes more sense, in my opinion, is the feds told them don't call 911, doesn't it, everyone? But nobody wants to talk about that supports Jay Embry for some reason, it seems. By the way, the coroner, Kathy Mabbitt, I keep saying her name wrong. Usually I call her Kathleen Abbott. Kathy Mabbitt, she never arrived to the crime scene, right? 1122 King Road till 5 p.m. to a quadruple homicide? Isn't that odd, everyone, right? So some forensics investigation teams were not in the right apparel. This is huge, everyone, right? No foot coverings, no masks for a lot of them. And this was a health hazard. It had to be a health hazard with a quadruple unaliving of stabbings. If this is what we were told, right, everyone? If this really happened, if this really went down, and again, we're supposed to feel sad and demoralized and really sad for the family parents because a quadruple unalivings happened of stabbings. So it's such a bloody crime scene. You know it's going to be a biohazard, right? Any frontline nurse would tell you that. And any frontline nurse looking at the crime scene photos and the videos would tell you the same thing. They didn't wear proper PPE gear most of the time, my friends. But again, has Jay Embry ever told you any of this? Has he ever made this clear, describing this? No. And yet this is a real reality of the case, my friends. And the reason I don't think he brings it up to you is because he knows that this supports an extraction removal operation. The other thing about Jay Embry, and I pointed out over and over again in my videos exposing this guy, is he never does interviews with other people except once, right? With A.R. Hayes, A Convict's Thoughts. That's it. And by the way, A.R. Hayes, A Convict's Thoughts, he has a good channel overall, but he believes the atrocity happened. He just goes along with that FBI narrative and that nonsense. But anyway, so again, everyone, you got to ask, why is Jay Embry choosing to go solo, doing hundreds of videos, when shouldn't he be interviewing other people and actually explore other theories? That's what real investigations do, my friends. They don't just go close-minded. And especially with no evidence. Again, everyone, Jay Embry seemingly trying to convince you that the atrocity happened, yet he can't prove it. And he's trying to convince you seemingly that the Arianites, the Aryan family, did this. They carried out the hit. Again, no evidence though to support it, everyone. Even the whole operation out front that night of the house, as I said in my last video, right? It was an operation. But the people that Embry and other YouTubers have pointed to, the dumpster guy, right? The guy sitting in the car also out front, sitting in a car for 3 to 4 hours the night of, right? You had somebody walking, pacing back and forth. You had another guy seemingly cocking a gun. You don't see him, but you hear a firearm. Now, if we can believe the audio is authentic of that night, yes, it was a firearm sound. There's no doubt about it. But Jay Embry's trying to convince you, seemingly again, everyone, that these are assailants. That's what he tells you. No, those were the feds. Those were the feds, most likely, everyone. And the feds, they actually probably extracted those students either hours before or possibly the day before, but they certainly went about extracting these students, I believe, everyone, removing the students from the house, putting them in a car, or first maybe they went on an underground tunnel system, but they would have had it pre-planned, everyone, most likely, and they got these students out. And then eventually they'll be in a vehicle, most likely, and they will be extracted, and they'll be probably removed out of the country. That's the real reality. That's the real powerful truth in this case, my friends. And we've been lied to, and you don't have to go along with it. And you don't have to go along with, in my opinion, YouTube creators that try to show you and tell you otherwise, because they got no evidence to back it up, my friends. There's more circumstantial evidence, I would argue, to connect dots that this, again, likely was an extraction removal operation, that the students are likely alive. That's what I'm trying to convey, my friends, and I'm trying to be authentic and as truthful and honest as I can, okay? And unlike Jay Embry, I'm willing to have open dialogue and conversations with other people that may have an opposite viewpoint. In other words, I'm willing to take the next step and actually be interviewed by people. I'm literally willing to discuss the extraction operation removal theory as a real viable, because I think there's a lot of validity to it. I think it's a very viable option, my friends, as to what really happened, right? And but Jay Embry won't go there, my friends. He refuses to have other people such as myself interview him unless he changes his mind. I've already challenged you, Jay Embry. If you got the courage and if you got any balls, in my opinion, you'll let somebody like me interview you, or you come onto my channel, one or the other. I go on yours, you come on mine. But I don't think you'll ever do it, everyone, because in my opinion, I think it's clear Jay Embry doesn't want to be asked the hard questions. He wants to continue to push out this nonsense that the atrocity took place and that it was done by Aryan family, Aryan Night members. And we're in 2025 now, everybody, okay? And he knows about Birdie's research. Birdie was the one that connected a lot of the dots first before anybody else, really, of an extraction operation theory, to really put it out there in a really good, concise way, I thought. And Jay Embry admitted he knows who Birdie is, so he knows his research, folks, okay? But anyway, I think I'm done with my rant on Jay Embry today a little bit, my friends. And I used to believe in the guy at first, but again, everyone, this happened on November 13, 2022. Please try to look from a different lens. Don't focus on the brainwashing that the atrocity took place, everyone. And please, just ask the questions. Is there any evidence to really show you that an atrocity took place? Is it possible this whole thing was a psyop? Is it possible, just like I told you, my friends, it's legal, it's legally binding, it's all written in law, my friends, the feds can actually stage a violent event if a confidential informant has been compromised. So they absolutely, theoretically, everyone, they can legally stage this whole violent event of the Idaho 4. They can actually try to con you using CIA through corporate media and bought out sellout journals. They can try to convince you that an atrocity took place, a quadruple unaliving, when it didn't happen, everyone. Okay? And then we can speculate as to why. Why did the feds feel it so necessary to fake the whole thing? Well, I think it's pretty simple in some ways, everyone. I think the feds, most likely, again, it's all about the revenue, of the university establishment, right? City council, the law enforcement officials, and it's all about money. Think about it, everyone, reputation. They couldn't have people in Moscow, Idaho, know who really was targeting these students, right, everyone? They certainly don't want you to think that gangbangers possibly want these students unalived, if that was the case, or cartel members, right, everyone? So what better way? They have to put an emotionally charged, I believe, atrocity, this fake unalivings, right? And then they arrest a Brian Kohlberger. They got to try to convince you somehow that a lone wolf possibly did it, or maybe another. Now the defense is bringing up alternative perps as possible alternative perp. It's all nonsense. It's all noise, my friends. It's all theater. In my opinion, the defense attorney, Ann Taylor, and her defense team, naturally, they're in on this whole cover-up for everybody. They would absolutely know, because they're intimately involved in this case, right? They would know that this extraction removal operation happened, in my opinion, everyone. They will know those students are alive, but they're not going to tell you, my friends. Again, this is all theater largely. Okay? I strongly believe that. Where are all the comments? What the heck is going on? This makes no sense. Welcome to live chat. Folks, I don't know what's going on. The chat page doesn't seem to be working. I'm just going to go on possibly for a few more minutes. One sec, everyone. I'm going to let the dog in, okay? One sec. Thanks for waiting. And when the dog's in now. So again, everyone, this was a staged crime scene through and through. They didn't treat it like a biohazard. I've gone over what Bertie did, the boxes too, by the way. You got, U.S. Marshals moving boxes out. That's very, very unusual. You could say, well, it's a small town, Jason. They didn't want the families to have to move, their so-called, what do you call it? The victims' things out, their kids' things out, the boxes. But again, my friends, they had Bethany's name on the box, one of the survivors. That's very, very odd. And here's the huge thing, everyone. What Bertie discovered with one of his researchers, it says North American relocations on the box. Think about that, my friends. Now, some people will say, well, Jason, ESTEY'S Crime Maze, so what? It's a moving company, right? They're moving boxes out. But I think a lot of people will admit that's very, very odd. That's huge red flags. And here's the biggest red flag, my friends, in my opinion, is Bertie, to his credit, he thought to himself, geez, I wonder if they work with the feds. And you know what the answer is, everyone? I bet you can guess. Yes. It's yes, they work with the feds. The parent company of North American Relocation Services is called CERVA. Look it up, everybody. Next time in my next video, I'll put it up on the screen again for you, everyone. And they got a Schedule 48 where they move valuable law enforcement assets. Think confidential informant, right, everyone? Confidential informants. And they protect, government officials, for example, etc. They do relocation operations, baby. This is not a coincidence, my friends. How could it be? How could it be? Sandy, I believe what you've been saying. Thank you, Sandy. You give me a lot of hope and optimism for this channel going forward, because I've been bashed a lot, especially by people that just fully praise, and think somehow Jay Embry is the best man in the world and we shouldn't criticize Jay Embry. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Leah says, who do you think we're after them? That's one of the $50,000 questions in this case, Leah. No, Leash 23. Am I saying your name right? I think that it definitely most likely had to do with the criminal underworld in some way, right? Some evildoers that were operating very deeply in some very sensitive organized crime, some drug running, or it could have even had to do with a crypto scam for all we know, but it definitely had to do with criminal activity, I believe, everyone. And it very well could have been gangbangers, People like Jay Embry might be correct in that part of the case, but they're not correct when they tell you that the hit, again, got carried out. No, that's what we've been fed by FBI and law enforcement. but with no evidence, everyone. Because again, they staged this crime scene, everyone, and they couldn't do everything perfectly. They couldn't even come close. There's all kinds of things to pick apart, right? People have pointed out the mattress. Didn't it have just like, they wanted to make sure that you saw some of the blood on the mattress. I forget how somebody explained it to me. And you had like this one cover of the mattress or something. That's not how you move a bloody mattress. And they put it in what, some pickup truck or something. It was all staging, right, everyone? Just like the red on the foundation of the house, even though that looks kind of convincing if you just see, just go by what you're seeing on the foundation of the house. But again, everybody, you'd have to believe that, again, it was such a bloody crime scene that, oh my God, the blood seeped out of the foundation of the house somehow. It's all, again, my friends, it's all staging. It's all staging, in my opinion, right? And the coroner, my friends, you can't trust the coroner. Of course, she had to make a public statement. She's part of the working with the feds, even if she doesn't really want to, in my opinion. She probably doesn't, but she's chosen to do it, apparently. I think she's just following a script. People picked her apart, too. She looked really nervous, everyone, right? She's bizarrely explaining to you Xana's behavior, fighting for her life, Xana Canoodle, then tells you to try to claim that, Kaylee's got different wounds. It's all horseshit, in my opinion, my friends. It's all lies. That's not real evidence. And again, do you really trust the coroner in this case, everyone? And my prediction is she won't even testify in this trial. I can almost guarantee it, everyone. We'll see if I'm right or not. And remember, Jeffrey Dahmer's trial, the coroner testified. I don't think the coroner testified on this one because I think it just makes more work for the feds. I think it'd be very difficult to cover up, potentially autopsy photos coming out, etc. Although anything's possible with AI these days, right? I hope I'm making sense here. Sandy, again, I appreciate you saying I believe what you've been saying. I'm glad. I think it makes sense, everyone. And more people, I hope, will start to actually question the whole narrative. That, why don't they say that more people say to themselves, I don't think this atrocity actually happened. Or at the very least, can we really be assured that this atrocity happened? Like we've been spoon-fed by guys like Jay Embry and others? When there's no evidence, where's the evidence? And again, my friends, I'm trying to get to this, just a couple items on this list I really wanted to mention. By the way, Maine law enforcement and Captain Fry, they never arrived until 4 p.m. approximately. Again, that's not right. Again, Coroner Kathy Mabbitt never arrived till 5 p.m. to a quadruple homicide, as I said earlier, everyone. And the coroner's statement was wrong. She said they were all stabbed in their beds. Remember that? Asleep. And then later on, one person on the floor, one person at least, and with defensive wounds, and so couldn't be asleep. So there you got discrepancies with the actual coroner statements, everyone. Think about that. And a strange way of moving bodies, a kind of tunnel covering to the vehicle not usually done. The autopsy at Spokane, 2 officers under investigation present. You got Tolleson and one other. And guess what, everyone? We learned in the hearings, I think it was, their notes and pictures lost. If this really took place, an atrocity, everyone, how could you have notes and pictures of an autopsy lost? You think that's just a coincidence? I don't think so. And the same coroner was present as at the house, Kathy Mabbitt, no neutral person. There you go, everyone. I had a friend help me come up with some of this, by the way. And the timing of the crime scene changed around a few times to match a story. There's something else I wanted to read to you here, everyone. I'm trying to find it. One sec. And again, thank you very much for listening and being with me. I hope you're having an amazing day, everyone. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. I hope. And perhaps hit that, as I like to say, smash that like button and hit the bell icon to be notified for future videos, because we're going to do some really, hopefully more really good videos on the Idaho 4, my friends, and eventually other crime cases as well. Just a sec here. Can't find it now. 1 sec. You still with me? Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And there was no forensic leaks, everyone, as I said earlier, right? No autopsy photos leaked. No raw crime scene footage of the crime scene, right? I mean, how does this happen? This day and age, my friends, we know in high-profile cases, you almost always get, leaked crime scene authentic photos or autopsy photos, but not in this case, my friends. Nothing. Absolutely zilch. Again, guys like Jambry should be telling you that, shouldn't he? But he won't go there. He won't bring truth and transparency that way, my friends, and he's not the only one. But I want you to know that. I had, here's a comment I wanted to read, everyone. Any investigator, too, will look at every possible angle. I could see both sides. None of these parents act as if their child has been murdered. They're following a predetermined narrative. I totally agree, my friends. And she goes on to say what I've been talking about. She knows I talk about this. This plays like a psychological operation, a psyop, as I talk about, right, everyone? One fact that is undeniable is that in every single syllable uttered in the prosecution, it's a complete lie. Totally agree. And she goes on to say that Brian Kohlberger is no murderer, right? Totally agree. This is, again, everyone, this is a psychological operation right from the get-go, my friends. I'm telling you. And this was a staged crime scene, in my opinion, everyone. This was an absolute psyop, okay? But, again, guys like Jay Embry are not telling you that. They're telling you the opposite with no evidence to support it, that the Aryan family, Aryan Knight's successful. And think about this, my friends. Guys like Jay Embry, in my opinion, he should be ashamed of himself. This guy, imagine how much power, how much evil more he gives to some of these gangbangers out there when he's telling you basically that gangbangers successfully did a hit, the most brutal quadruple unalivings, stabbings, blood everywhere. And he's telling you that they successfully did this hit without even entertaining the idea that it was staged crime scene. He won't even bring up the word staged crime scene. Won't even interview other people that would bring up staged crime scene. Are you kidding me? Imagine, again, how much power he's giving potentially to gangbangers out there, some of these guys, my friends, some of these groups. Because the point is, why would any confidential informant that's trying to help the feds potentially, right? Let's say Moscow, Idaho, or Washington State, why would anyone want to snitch if they actually believe Jay Embry's theory that Aryan Knights and Aryan families, I guess they did all these stabbings and got out clean? Who the hell would ever snitch? Nobody would ever snitch. Nobody would ever try to help the feds do drug busts. So who the hell is somebody like Jay Embry working for? That's the question I ask everyone. Is he really solo? Is he possibly a disinformation agent? I think you know where I come from, what I think of this guy. What do you guys think? We got to ask, and don't just blindly follow these people just because he goes by the court docs. And he doesn't tell you that court docs can be manipulated, and probably are in this case. Hello? Okay? And more importantly, my friends, he will not interview other people except once. I've challenged him to do an interview. I don't think he'll have the courage to do an interview with me. I'd be very, very pleasantly surprised if he did. Because, my friends, in my opinion, again, Jay Embry has shown his true colors. He doesn't want us to ask the hard questions and talk about extraction, relocation. Let's see if a guy like Jay Embry, can you really back up what you're saying in an interview, Jay Embry, to your audience and to whoever's interviewing you? Can you really back up that assailants did this hit and actually did it successfully? Unfortunately, unaliving 4 people, brutally stabbing. Can you really prove that? Can you back that up? Can you back up that the Aryan family, the Aryan Knights actually did this? Are you kidding me? And my friends, again, the feds were all over the neighborhoods that night. This is a fact. We know it. And the nights previous and the nights after, they were all psyched up and pumped up for the drug bust that was to take place, my friends, right? They had parallel investigations going on. We saw the outcome. We saw the outcome of, I believe, a totally staged crime scene and Idaho 4 PSYOP, where they were able to do the major drug bust in Washington State. So obviously, everyone, the feds, I believe, faking this quadruple unaliving and rescuing these students, which is a good thing, it served the feds' purpose, everyone. And even though I exposed some of the feds' lies or think that they're lying in some ways, in the FBI in this case, let's give credit where credit is due. The feds did their job and they protected these students. Again, you've got to think the feds, these feds in Moscow, Idaho, are completely moronic to have surveillance on the house, and yet somehow a quadruple homicide happens on your watch. And if you believe Jay Embry of gangbangers going into a house and doing all these stabbings, and Ethan Chapman, by the way, 6'3", 6'4", you think he's easy to take out? I don't think so. It didn't happen. I'm telling you, everyone. There's no way. I'm convinced of it in my mind. But again, my opinions, facts back it up. Leah says, I'm subscribed. Awesome. Thank you very much. That means a lot. It really does. My channel's been growing very, very quickly the last few weeks. I'm really pleased. It also helped that I exposed Jay Embry. I did a video, again, exposing this guy. And I also did an apology video to him because I showed intellectual integrity and honesty because I had made a mistake. When I exposed Embry, I made one mistake. I thought he didn't talk about the WITSEC program at all. I think I said it was almost positive, but not 100%. And then I found out I was wrong. So I did an apology video. I explained that. Yes, he did talk about the WITSEC program. He had an AI, he did AI tools with an AI voice, talking about the basics of the WITSEC program. But ironically, everyone, with Jay Embry in that WITSEC video, what it doesn't tell you is what I told you earlier, everyone, that legally the feds can stage a violent event if a confidential form has been compromised. Don't you think Jay Embry should be telling his huge audiences this? Why isn't he telling you? I think you can put two and two together, my friends, if you're honest. 1 second, I'm going to let the puppy in and then let her out. 1 second. Hey, again. Again. Come on. So there you have it, everyone. Anybody have any questions for me? Any more? Sandy, it all makes sense now. Nobody saw the bodies being taken out. Exactly, Sandy. Exactly. Leash 23 says no blood. I love you guys and gals. Absolutely. And yet I get bashed just because I ask hard questions and give my opinions of this Jay Embry character, right, on YouTube. Some people even give him constructive criticisms, as they'll say he's more of an entertainment channel, I think. Well, to each their own. But why isn't this guy talking about what Sandy and Leash has just said? No blood. You see, you don't hear that from Jay Embry. When he rightly says the 911 call he thinks was coerced, I totally agree. But he doesn't tell you, well, why aren't they mentioning, why is not Dylan or Bethany or anybody on the 911 call, why aren't they screaming, there's blood everywhere, especially when they're talking about Xana's body on the floor? Are you kidding me? But he won't go there. He won't tell you that. It's despicable, in my opinion. Leah says, but through the 2 years, I've enjoyed the crime family time. Awesome. Leah says, I did think in the beginning of the case, my conspiracy mind was determined to prove it was a PSYOP. It is a PSYOP. Totally agree. By the way, everyone, I find it kind of humorous. People will bring up the word PSYOP, even in videos, actually YouTube creators. And I'm glad, you're bringing up PSYOP today in the comments, Leah. Yes. But am I saying your name right, Leah? Yes, I think I am. Leah Story. But I find, but nobody defines what a psyop is that I know of except me. I've defined in my videos. I don't have time to do it today, everyone, but it's very, very important to understand what a psyop is. So if you check out my previous videos, I've defined what a psyop is, everyone, psychological operations. And once you understand that, I think it all relates largely to the Idaho 4 case, my friends. And by the way, Steve G, Kaylee Gonzalez's father, I don't trust him, in my opinion. I think he looks like a Fed, like Bertie says. I think he acts like a Fed. I agree. And he's probably signed a non-disclosure with the FBI, almost certainly, to put out this pre-planted narrative, this emotionally charged narrative, to give a certain amount of information, right? And really, it's all about convincing the public that the atrocity took place. It's all part of the staging, the psyop, in my opinion, everyone. Steve G's in on it, in my opinion. And people are rightly so very angry at this guy, most people, right? Because apparently he's received over $80,000 from the public, you hard-earned taxpayers. He keeps asking for money, apparently, my friends. Are you kidding me? And people will say, on the back of your daughter's death? Well, how about if his daughter's alive, my friends? How about if the extraction removal operation is true, which I think it is? That's even more abhorrent and disgusting from Steve G, isn't it? To ask money when you're lying to the public, when you know your daughter was rescued by the feds. So I would just ask Steve G, Steve, shut your mouth. Get off corporate media. Stop lying to the public. Stop being a con man that I think that you are, and just shut your mouth. We don't need to be lied to anymore with this nonsense. Because it never happened, my friends. It's hard to prove this, though, yes. Well, Leah, just like for the feds, though, and the FBI, it's hard to prove that the atrocity even took place, isn't it? Because they showed their hand, my friends. We can see the staged crime scene. We can see how they didn't treat it like a biohazard. That's the staged crime scene, isn't it, everyone? Again, not wearing the proper PPE. You know it would be a biohazard, a health risk with all the blood and the chemicals, not to mention that they're using to try to, discover DNA or clean up the blood, especially, etc. I mean, come on. But does Steve know she's alive? In my opinion, absolute yes, Leah. He would know. And by the way, I've said in previous videos, the WITSEC program, the Federal Witness Protection Program, guess what? The United States has one in Costa Rica. And Steve G, apparently he's going to have a vacation after the trial. He said in, it was either in Costa Rica or it was in Puerto Rico. One or the other, my friends. But, the United States, for all we know, they could have a WITSEC program in both Puerto Rico and Costa Rica. But these federal programs, again, exist, everyone. The infrastructure exists. Your taxpayers' money has paid for this stuff. Steve G, the feds, they'll probably try to find a way Steve G can see his daughter again, hopefully Kaylee. Maybe he won't be able to. And if that's the case, that is sad. I can have some empathy, but I'm just tired of Steve G's lies, everyone. He shouldn't be lying to us over and over again. Just shut your mouth, man. Just shut your mouth, in my opinion. And by the way, can't you guys see through their parents? I know I'm not the only one. Many people have talked about it. The guy doesn't cry. Your one of your beloved daughters has been brutally stabbed to death, and yet you're going to open your mouth. You're going to show some righteous anger at times, supposedly to the cops and the feds and this and that, and yet you don't get emotional crying at all with your beloved daughter, talking about her. And he even goes on trying to convince you, seemingly, that his daughter's nose was smashed in her face, but he doesn't even break down. Are you kidding me? I don't buy it, my friends. I don't buy it. Don't buy it at all. And by the way, Ethan Chapman's family, I'm sure they're great parents, everyone. And by the way, Steve G, I'm sure he's been a good parent in some ways. I want to give, again, credit where credit's due. Steve G, I don't think Steve G, even though I've been hard on him the last few minutes, he's not an evil person. I'm not saying that. There's good redeeming qualities about this man, I think. He seemingly had a very good, for example, relationship with Kaylee. So I can feel for him on that, okay? But again, everybody, we have been lied to, and we're continually being lied to. And you don't have to buy it. It's up to you, everyone, right? We don't have to be hoodwinked. And I just wish, again, Steve G would just kind of shut his mouth. And his lovely wife, too. And they get their daughter trying to, I think, go along with this script, this pre-planted narrative nonsense, too, okay? And by the way, my friends, Christy Gonzalez, she admitted in an interview recently that that Madison Mogan, Maddie, just bought a new house. Think about that, everyone. Apparently, she blurted it out by a mistake. Bubbly Water shows you on the video. It's crazy. Wild. I got to go, my friends, in a moment. My battery's about to go out, too. Cheryl says he has another daughter that he never brings up. If it happened, it's because of all the parents. But I'm buying into what you're saying, Cheryl says. Thank you, Cheryl. Really appreciate it. I have heard from quite a few people that I think it's a known fact, but don't quote me, that one of Steve's daughters wants nothing to do with Steve G. But I usually don't bring it up, everyone, because it's none of my business, and I really don't know if that's true or not. Again, it's none of my business. So I just wanted to quickly mention that as I'm rambling on. But again, everybody, and Ethan Chapman's family, everyone, as Bertie said, he reviewed one of their interviews, and they said they're not even mad. How could you not be angry and mad at one or more assailants when your beloved son was brutally stabbed to death, if we're supposed to believe this? How could you not be upset and mad? Are you kidding me? And then you got Steve G, who's playing the complete opposite role, in my opinion, where he's really angry. I mean, does any of that really make sense, everyone? And again, I feel for Ethan Chapman's family, though I had a qualifier. They may never be able to see their son again, everyone, if he indeed is protected under WITSEC program, right? But I don't think he's unalived. I don't think we have to have that kind of sadness for the parents, my friends. I think the real reality is these students were rescued by the feds. It's simple. And I think the circumstantial evidence points towards that. Cheryl says, enjoy listening to this different theory, and they never showed anything about removing those bodies. Exactly, Cheryl. That's why I go so hard at times after this Jay Embry. He doesn't tell you about this. His whole narrative is he keeps repeating like a brainwashing. The atrocity happened, the atrocity happened. He even has it in titles at times, right? And he keeps saying the Aryan family and the Aryan Knights, they did the atrocity. And he doesn't talk about, well, wait a sec, there's no evidence of the removal of bodies. Oh, wait a sec, the feds can actually legally stage something like the Idaho 4. They could literally stage a violent event if a confidential informant has been compromised. And Jay Embry goes on and on about confidential informants, but he doesn't tell you this valuable information, everyone. And so I think it's natural to ask why. Is he possibly a disinformation agent specialist? Where did he come from? He came from the ether. No one knew who this guy was. You know, I'm pretty proud to say I was a public speaker. I was honored to do it, privileged during COVID, as I've said in my videos. Going against the mandates, ridiculous mandates, like with many of you out there, everyone. But who is Jay Embry? Anyway, that's all I wanted to say today, my friends. We could go on for hours, but my battery's running out. Thank you so much for your comments. You guys keep me going. You keep me charged up. I appreciate you subscribing and your comments, and I hope you'll share this video perhaps. They slipped and said, Maddie just bought a house. Exactly, Cheryl. Exactly. Thank you, Leah. I'm glad you said